You can go meet somebody, you can go do breath work, you can go take a supplement, you can go to the gym. But if you're doing that rooted from a place of insecurity or lack, then it's only going to be a temporary void filler, and you're going to end up worse off than when you started.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Thrive State Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. V, triple board certified MD and performance and longevity expert. And on today's episode, I get to introduce to you a very, very good friend of mine. He's actually the king of marketing. He's the host of the Mind of George podcast, New York Times bestselling author, George Bryant. Now, I mentioned to you that he is a master of marketing. Now, why would I bring a marketing person into the Thrive State podcast, into the podcast that really elevates our human potential? Well, he does something different with marketing, and his whole belief and mantra is relationships over algorithms. This is so important. Relationships is actually one of the 7 bioenergetic elements that I talk about in my book, Thrive State. And it's building and nurturing and cultivating positive relationships in our life that actually changes the biochemistry within us. This is the importance of relationships. And the most important relationship that we could have is really the relationship we have for ourselves. And what I love about George is, yes, he is a guru in marketing, but he's really using marketing as a Trojan horse for people to do the personal development work. And you'll get to understand and see his perspective on today's conversation. Now, before I say any more, I just want to ask you to do us a favor. If this podcast has given you value, if your life has been upgraded by this podcast, please engage with it by subscribing, by liking, by leaving some comments, and also leaving a 5-star review wherever you're listening to this podcast. It's really going to help this message grow and impact more and more people. And if you haven't already, what are you waiting for? Pick up a copy of my book, Thrive State, at thrivestatebook.com. It's going to give you the tools and framework as to how to actually make some powerful choices that will put you into the Thrive State, which is really this energetic way of being. And that energy actually speaks to your DNA to give you optimal health, longevity, and peak performance. Now, again, it is super awesome to have some brilliant friends, and I got a chance to connect again with George at the 8th Annual Biohacking Conference. He was there doing some marketing work with a lot of big brands. I got a chance to pull him away for a few minutes. In fact, I was first a client of his. I learned the master of his mind of how to actually take your message and what you want to do in the world and connect with people. This is why his mantra is relationships over algorithms. Now, if you don't know his personal story, he was actually a veteran. He's been homeless, he's been bullied, he's been abused, and he's also been in combat. How does that person then turn his life around, become a New York Times bestselling author, a 7-figure entrepreneur, a CrossFitter, and somebody that is known as the marketing guy? He's now home. He's done a lot of the personal development work himself. He's learned that as he's learned more about himself, he doesn't need to be dependent or codependent in relationships. We take that conversation in today's episode of the Thrive State podcast. And without further ado, please welcome my good friend, George Bryant.
Hey, it's Dr. V with another special edition of the Thrive State podcast. We are here at the Biohacking Conference. And, you know, every time you come to one of these events, you hang out with some really awesome people. And this is actually a very good friend of mine. His name is George Bryant. George Bryant he used to be a chef, New York Times bestselling author, and now a major marketing consultant for huge brands everywhere. And the reason why I have him on today is I want to talk about relationships.
That's the game.
In my book, I talk about how relationships really, stimulate oxytocin production, and really as human beings, that's how we're born to be. But relationships as it pertains to marketing, relationship, these days are, I don't know, I feel so superficial.
Yeah.
How do you, now every time I call you up, you just pour from the heart.
Yep.
Let's talk about relationships and how you built them so well.
Yeah, well, I think the easiest way is to realize that I do it now because I did it all wrong for so long. And in the world of life, and what I love about you when you talk about like Thrive State of Performance, I feel like a lot of people default to relationships and they mean everybody outside of myself. And I fell into that bucket for a long time, right? Everything in business, everything in entrepreneurship, everything in life, it was about how many relationships could I collect or how many tools could I add? And I was avoiding the void of the relationship with myself. And, one of my principles, one of the philosophies that I teach is that nobody has a business problem, nobody has a marketing problem, nobody has a fitness problem, everybody has a relationship problem. But it's the relationship with themselves that's neglected constantly. And I love what I teach and what I do because at the core of it, we don't fix marketing. We fix somebody's self-relationship to instill confidence and clarity and have the ability to navigate those things and more effectively use the tools. And in Thrive State and the things that you talk about, what I think is so powerful is that you can go meet somebody, you can go do breath work, you can go take a supplement, you can go to the gym. But if you're doing that rooted from a place of insecurity or lack, then it's only going to be a temporary void filler and you're going to end up worse off than when you started. And so really, I just use marketing as a Trojan horse to get people to do personal development.
That's amazing because I remember, I first met George because I hired him as a consultant and we spent 2 full days together, and I was amazed to actually look at marketing from that lens because I felt like I was going to a personal development seminar and not a marketing class because we went, into the deep psychology of why people want things and who they are.
And I think that's like one of the greatest things. Like I say, every day you're an entrepreneur, you have the ability to either have 20 years of therapy in one day or regress 20 years in one day. Because no matter which way we slice it, a lot of people get wrapped up in, and this applies across marketing, across business, to life in general. They get wrapped up and codependent on things that are out of their control. How other people view them, how people do things, how markets change, how customers change. And we really advocate our own sovereignty over and over and over again. And we operate in this sympathetic victim mode. And then we increase our cortisol. We increase our stress, we don't sleep, and then we just keep adding gasoline to the fire. But at the end of the day, the only thing we can do is shrink our world to everything that we can control and start with N1. And I feel like in the world that we live in right now, people are like, well, business is the big economy or content, and we're not. We're in an attention commodity. The number one traded commodity today is attention. And so many people are victims of everybody else's agenda because they're convinced and quite frankly gaslit very frequently that you have to do it this way or you have to check this box, you have to do it. But I tell everybody is that the problem is that we spend a majority of our life doing everything that prevents us from building a relationship with the one person we're guaranteed to spend the rest of our life with.
So let me ask you a question. I know for me, I had the wake-up call when I had physical health problems. Many people get the wake-up call when they have a physical, mental, emotional, some type of thing hits them so hard that they wake up. How do we prevent people from, how do we get people to start waking up earlier?
This episode of the Thrive State podcast is brought to you by the Thrive State Accelerator. The Thrive State Accelerator is actually a home course that I developed using the exact same techniques I work with my celebrity clients, CEOs, and executives on how to get them to the Thrive State. The Thrive State Accelerator teaches you how to master your 7 bioenergetic elements. That's sleep, nutrition, movement, stress and emotional mastery, relationships, our thoughts and mindset, as well as purpose. In this Thrive State Accelerator, you're also going to get a bonus module on optimization. That's how I talk about supplementation, peptides, all the optimization techniques I use with my clients to get them to the Thrive State. Now, for some of you who are just joining us for the first time, you guys might be wondering, what is the Thrive State?
Well, the Thrive state is actually the energy, the epigenetic environment we give to ourselves, telling our DNA how to act and how to respond. And if we want optimal health, longevity, and peak performance, if we can master these 7 bioenergetic elements, our ability to have those 3 things that we just said, optimal health, longevity, and peak performance, is at its greatest. And it also prevents you from getting chronic symptoms like brain fog, being overweight, feeling sluggish, acne, pain, all these chronic symptoms, as well as preventing you from getting chronic disease. So getting to that Thrive state is really getting to that state to master being that very best version of yourself so you could show up for you, for your family, for your business, everything that's important to you. So go ahead, check it out right now at kienfood.com/accelerator and use coupon code podcast25 for 25% off. Now back to the podcast.
I love this question. And you know what it is for me? It's like, I've had all those moments too, right? It was like, okay, I was 260 pounds. I was addicted to opiates, right? Like my wife left me. I went almost bankrupt. And really, when all of those bombs were dropped, nothing in my life changed, but it brought a massive amount of awareness to everything that was out of alignment with how I was living. And it was out of alignment because I had never sat down and said, what do I really want? And I lived this life of microscopic lies. And it really, really boils down to having an integrous relationship with yourself and having the curiosity and the willingness to ask yourself questions like, what do I want? And who do I want to be? And not looking for a quick hit or a quick fix, but really taking the time to sit with that. And I feel like a lot of people struggle because they live this life out of integrity. Like, I watch my day all the time. I catch myself in white lies 50 times. I'm like, oh shit, wait, no, I'm lying. I didn't mean that. And I clean it up over and over and over again, because at the end of the day, the success that we have in our life really comes down to the level of integrity we have in the relationship with ourselves. Yeah. And it took those big catalyst moments for me to realize and wake up. But when you can get ahead of that and you can start to notice the areas of your life that aren't in alignment, like, for example, social functions. We're at a big conference. Everybody's pounding wine and having drinks. And I'm like, it would be so easy for me to have a glass of wine and then another one and another one. And I have no problem with drinking. But at the core of it, I'm like, this isn't what I want to do. And it's my willingness to say, hey, I don't have to succumb to peer pressure. I can hang out with you and do these things. I can go for a 20-minute walk. I can skip that meal. I can eat a better choice. And like you said yesterday, it really boils down to the choices that we make. But I believe what matters more is that the choices are from a place of alignment and integrity, not from a place of outside pressure. And it's our willingness to sit with that. So like my favorite practice, I assigned this to like 20 people yesterday, and they all came to see me this morning, and they were like, what the fudge? And I'm like, I told you. And they're like, what's the secret? I'm like, when you wake up tomorrow morning, before you touch the world, I want you to sit still and practice boredom for 20 minutes. No phone, no music, no notepad, no nothing. And there's one rule. Whatever happens in that moment stays in that moment, and you can't write anything down. If you get anxiety, ask yourself where it's coming from. If you find yourself thinking down a rabbit hole, come back to your breath. But it's really like that Viktor Frankl quote that you share. It's practicing being in a relationship with our autonomic nervous system and choosing how we respond so that we have the clarity to check if we're in alignment, if we're doing the things that are going to help us thrive. And it just so happens that if you take your book and you apply it to business or to marketing or to team leadership, all the same principles apply and basically guarantee success. But alignment and intentionality is an active choice. It's not going to happen. It's not going to be a supplement. It's not going to be a book that I read and did nothing with. It's the constant application of that from a place of clarity of like, is this what I want? Is this how I want to live? Is this the best decision for my life, for my business, for my team, for my health? And I feel like we live in a world where everybody's competing for that attention, and we don't give ourselves the space to be in that relationship.
So good. I bet bet you guys didn't realize we were going to go this deep on the concept of relationship, but really just starting the relationship with yourself. George, you do such awesome content. He's got the Mind of George podcast. What can people expect in terms of the content and what they can learn, and how do they learn more from you in the future?
Yeah, I love it. So my whole secret sauce is that I don't think any human beings need any more tools in their toolbox. I think that they need to practice their ability to utilize the tools that they have. And so the whole premise of my podcast is to help anybody, entrepreneurs, business owners, stay-at-home moms, live their better life. And we teach principles through the lens of business and through the lens of marketing, but I give it all away for free. And the best place to find me is the Mind of George Show. I would recommend my website because it's beautifully pink and magenta all over.
Like his shoes.
And like my shoes, it's mindofgeorge.com. But I will say this for everybody listening or watching this, the most important thing for me is that it doesn't become shelf help. I don't need you consuming something else to do nothing with. I have a rule on my podcast. You listen to one, don't listen to another until you've applied what I've taught. And start making that incremental progress and change every single day. Because as Elon Musk says, and a lot of other people have, and Tony Robbins as well, is that a lot of people overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in 10. And I think if we're very intentional about the choices that we make, and every day we make one choice, two choices that bring us closer to that alignment or closer to the things that we want, your success is inevitable. It's just a matter of patience and consistency to get there.
That is beautiful. George, I know you've done tons of stuff, lots of personal development and, lots of biohacking and so much tech. What has been your best medicine?
My best medicine has been stillness and alone time. And I will say that there is a direct correlation through a lot of the greats that I study and a lot of my mentors and myself included, that the more time I spend alone, the more success that I have. And the deeper I cultivate that relationship, the deeper I'm able to withstand the pressure or the noise or running $100 million company or $1 billion company. And it's really a muscle. And if you don't use it, it atrophies. And if you proactively use it, you will find parts of yourself, your intuition, your clarity in yourself to have confidence to apply to any situation that arises in your life. And I think that that's the most powerful thing. And that means like through all the plant medicine, through 7 figures of therapy, every modality I've ever done, if I could go back in time, the one thing I would do would force myself to spend more time alone.
Beautiful. All right. Thanks, George, for being on the Thrive State podcast.
Thanks for having me, man. Love it.
I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Thrive State podcast. And if this podcast is bringing a lot of value to you, if you find that your life is just improving with this podcast, that your life is getting to the next level, please consider supporting it. And here's a few ways you can do so. You can do so by liking this video and commenting on this video, and also sharing this video with your friends and family. Another thing you can do is go to ratethis.com/ThriveState. Go ahead and leave us a 5-star review there. It will really, really help this show grow. And this will give me more time so that I could actually give more content to you, just like you got in this episode. And if you haven't already picked up a copy of my book, Thrive State, Your Blueprint for Optimal Health, Longevity, and Peak Performance, you can pick it up now. It became a #1 new release in longevity. Go to thrivestatebook.com. And if you enjoy the book, please consider leaving us a review as well. And the last thing you can do, if you're liking everything here and you want to work more closely with me as well as my team to get you into the Thrive State, go to kienvu.com/accelerator and consider joining the home course, the Thrive State Accelerator. It's really the course that I use. It's the concepts that I use personally when I work with CEOs, celebrities, and my high-profile clients to get them to the Thrive State. Again, the Thrive State Accelerator at kienvu.com/accelerator. And because you're a listener of this podcast, I want you to save 25% by using the coupon code podcast25. I hope we continue to give value to you. And remember always, you are your best medicine.